everyone, it's Jess here from the Scrappy Sisters, and thank you for joining me for this latest process video. So I have been totally inspired by a layout that was shared in the Cocoa Vanilla Studios fan group, I guess it is, just the Cocoa Vanilla Studios Facebook group. Rachel Dutko shared a layout quite early after the release of Daydream, and I just adored it and it really spoke to me. So I have very much scrap lifted this layout from her and was super thankful to her for sharing the gorgeous layout that she created. So I've started off with some gesso to add to the back of my white 12x12 paper, and this is white gesso that I'm using. And this is textured American Crafts white paper. And I've just pulled out some watercolors and I'm going to do the packaging technique. So I've got a little piece of plastic that I've used before for mixed media. That's why it's already got some paint on it, but that's dry. And I'm going to add some blue first to my packaging. So actually I'm going to start with green apparently. Sorry about that. So I'm just adding that onto the page, just sort of wetting the watercolor and trying to scoop it up with my brush and adding that onto the packaging. A little goes a long way. So the amount you can see there on the packaging ends up being tons. In fact, if I was to do this again, it's too much. I would do less. So if you're sort of new to the packaging technique, this amount that I have created goes a very long way on my page. It is quite a lot of water and quite a lot of color, and I probably needed less. But anyway, I'm going to hold it in my hands and I'm going to give it a flip and squish it down on top of my page, and that's going to be my little messy packaging technique creation there. And I'm just going to use a serviette to sort of dry it up just a little. Do be careful when you do that. You will put prints, like every time you put it back down, you will put prints of the paint on different parts of your paper. But in terms of the packaging technique, it's not a super neat technique. So for me, that's okay, because that was kind of the messy splat look I was kind of going for. So now I'm going to go in with the blue. I'm going to do a little bit less of the blue because there was definitely a lot of that green. And I'm going to add a little bit of this blue onto the page as well. Now, I'm really liking the feel of this, but there's not really enough sort of colors for me yet that really highlight how the colors in the Daydream collection. So I was going to add some pink and realized I hadn't cleaned my brush properly and it made a purple, which actually was a better color choice. So I'm quite happy that it's now purple and not pink, because I think that was a really nice color to add to the mess that's already on the page. So I'm going ahead and doing some purple, and I'm going to splatter all that on as well. Lovely. So then once I'm sort of happy with the mess that this is, I am going to lighten it up just a little by dabbing some off with the serviette, and then once it dries it will lighten up even further. I am also going to put my gold Heidi Swap Color Shine on now while the page is wet, and the reason I'm doing that is I really love the effect of how the color shine sort of runs and sort of spreads along where the rest of it is wet. So if you like that look, definitely do it while your page is wet. If you rather the sort of clean splatters and spots, definitely wait until it's dry. Now, something that Rachel did that totally just popped for me was backing some house cut files, white cut files backed with white paper. That I've never done that before, and when I saw her layout it just popped off the page, and I definitely wanted to replicate that. That was sort of even more so than the mixed media in the background. That's what really stood out to me from Rachel's layout. So I am using the Build a Village cut file from Confessions of the Paper Addict cut files. It's technically one of the Christmas cut files, but obviously I've just used all the houses that look like houses. And did exactly what Rachel did by cutting them out with white cardstock and then backing them with white cardstock. And I just adore the look of that. It's really simple but really striking at the same time. And I think because this is my wedding album, I'm really loving all the white. So then I went ahead and stuck all the houses and my 2 photos up on foam. And now I'm going to have a play with how I think I would like these to be embellished. You saw me having a little bit of a fiddle when I was checking that it was all going to sort of work. And now it's just time for me to get playing. I also wanted to mention that you saw how sort of crazy that mixed media background looked before I started the layout. But now with all those houses across the center and then with the 2 photos, and now that I'm building up my clusters, there's so much of it is sort of getting covered. So I think Missy Whidden is someone that often says you need more mixed media than you think you're going to need, and don't panic too much because you really will end up covering quite a lot of it with a lot of our layout designs. So that was definitely the case for me. So obviously my layout's not going to be identical to Rachel's, and I would never want it to be an exact copy of Rachel's, but definitely very inspired by her white houses. So now I'm just having a play with how I would like to place my clusters and where I would like my clusters to be. I've mentioned quite a few times, especially in my earlier videos, that Janet from over at RTS Scrapbooking often refers to clusters, obviously with your visual triangle. She refers to clusters in sort of amounts. She says, you can have your 70% cluster, your 50% cluster, and your 30% cluster. And I kind of like that train of thought sometimes when I'm feeling a bit stifled with my scrapbooking. I think it's a nice little rule to use if you need it. So that's kind of the rule that I've gone to here. I've got my 3 clusters and I've got them sort of sized as well. So the one up there near the houses' roofs that I'm working on now, that's going to be my smaller cluster, my 20% cluster or my 30% cluster. And I'm just having a play with how I want all of that to sort of sit together. And then my other 2 clusters, I'm not even sure which one you'd say. I think the one that I've already created down the bottom on the right is probably my largest cluster, and then I am going to do another one on the left of the photos as well that will be my sort of middle-sized cluster. It's not, a hard and fast rule. You do not have to count the amount of things you have in each cluster or something like that. It's just visually pleasing to have varying sizes in your clusters and to also have the triangle effect happening on your page. And I definitely don't do this for every single layout I create, but sometimes when I'm feeling a bit stuck, it's definitely a nice place to go, just to help you as a base of how you want to create and what you want to create next. I decided as well when I saw the houses in the Daydream Collection ephemera that I would use pretty much all of them or as many of them as I could on my layout today, because I wasn't 100% sure on a wedding layout where else I would get those on. So I just decided while I was at home getting ready for the wedding, I would just use all of the houses. Probably didn't need every single house on the page today, but I managed to get them on. It doesn't look too, over the top. And yeah, I think it was probably a wise choice in terms of my wedding layouts. I think in the end, I would have just put one on a page anyway, even if it didn't quite make sense. But yeah, I'm very interested to see if I can manage with the amount of supplies I have to create an entire album. I think some of the layouts as we get closer and closer to the end of my wedding album, I'm going to be scraping the bottom of my barrel to have enough supplies. I may need to order some more, but that's okay. If that needs to happen, then I will. So yeah, now I'm working on my next cluster, and I'm thinking I definitely want those 2 houses like that, very similar to what Rachel did. But I know it needs a little bit something else. Those houses just seem to be popping out of nowhere. They don't really have a base or an anchor, a reason for them to be sitting out there on the page. So I do end up adding a little floral cluster. Sorry, I kind of half spoke and then got distracted watching my own hands on the video screen there. So yeah, I do end up adding a little floral cluster as well, because I think that's going to help sort of anchor those houses to the page and give them a purpose of sitting there. Now, I've mentioned, I think, in the last 4 videos, so if you've been watching, you know this already, that every single one of my wedding album layouts is going to have a mixed title. It's going to have one of these die cuts, and it's also going to have some thickers as well. And I did go ahead and start pre-planning those titles, because I realized probably about now, this many layouts in, that I better make sure I can make enough words that make sense and that are logical and that match together for the amount of layouts I want to do. And luckily I could. And I had exactly the correct number of die cut words. I cannot believe the luck I had with that. I will have to doctor some of my thickers a little bit, because of course there are never enough vowels, but that's okay, I can manage that. It was more the die cut ephemera words. I was just astounded that I literally had the exact number of words left for the number of layouts I needed to create. I did have to really think for some of them to come up with a title using the word from the ephemera pack, but luckily all the words were, really not too specific, not too they weren't like holiday or anything like that, because obviously that would be really hard to get into a wedding album. So that was good. So I've almost finished building up this last little cluster here. I'm just having a play. I found a piece of ephemera that said Home Sweet Home. And again, same problem. I knew I just could not get that on any other layout that was to do with a wedding. So I really wanted to make sure I could get it on this particular layout. And I just wasn't sure where to put it without it having it stand out and be odd. Like, why is that there? That's very strange. So yeah, I managed to squeeze it between the 2 houses, and I think that is a nice little addition to those. And then the cute little butterfly. And I love that little rainbow pennant. I knew I had to get him on. He is just so cute. I love how little it is. So cute. And yeah, like I think every layout I've created with this collection I've just loved. I'm really into this collection at the moment, and I'm loving the layouts that other people are sharing, because that's definitely inspiring me when I'm creating. This one by Rachel was just beautiful, and she shared it right back when Daydream was very first released, and I've been holding on to it for all of that time, and knew that I just had to get some white houses on my layout as well. So just stunning. So now I've got some close-up photos for you to be able to check out. And here we are. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this process video. I hope I have inspired you to get creating, get some packaging techniques and some white on white cut file action happening. And thank you so much for watching. Bye everyone.